I have clear vision. I have a zit I popped on my forehead, and we have crazy weather going on as well. Welcome back to Weekly by Tiers after Thanksgiving break here. We even have the cops after us. Wonderful day. So,
Tsunami police.
tsunami.
Grant's
Oh,
in the
but,
tsunami shelter coming at you live.
yeah, but stay safe there. We're going to go ahead and dive into this, though. So, the smashes for this week for running backs. I mean, Grant honestly took a few of the guys that I immediately was looking at the board and I was just sitting there like, damn, that's one I really wanted. But Saquon, he projects to be the RB1 this week against the Panthers. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for 40 fantasy points, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this game just doesn't remain close. There's a lot of ways this can play out. Kamara, Chase Brown, what should we be expecting from these two monsters?
Yeah, Kamara just feels like a smash against a run defense that hasn't been great. And you also add in the factor of Taysom Hill being out, who's been vulturing a lot of those goal line carries. He's now out for the season. So it feels like a spot where Kamara is going to get even more dump off work, where Taysom Hill is taking some of that. He's going to get all the brunt of the carries around the goal line and kind of in all situations. So this feels like a spot where Kamara could easily be the RB1 this week.
Yeah, I picked Chase Brown last week. I'm picking him again this week against the Cowboys. This dude has been going absolutely nuts. He has 19 or more fantasy points in 4 straight games. The Cowboys defense is just really bad against running backs. They allow almost 19. They've allowed 7 running backs to beat them by 19 fantasy points. So I think Chase Brown is likely to get 5 in a row here.
I like it. All right. Wide receivers. For me, I'm just being boring. I'm going with wide receiver one. Everybody likes to fade Darnold. It's very good logic, but what if he's just been playing better? Which I think he has. I don't have any fun schematic notes, but taking a chance on wide receiver one, Justin Jefferson. Malik Neighbors, Drake London, what should we like here?
Yeah, Neighbors is getting a ton of targets the last few weeks. The depth of target hasn't really been great, but this feels like a situation against that New Orleans secondary, who since losing Marshawn Lattimore has not been great. So it just feels like a situation where he's going to get that crazy volume once again, and then hopefully this is the week when he finds himself into the end zone, or maybe just catches like a few more 20 to 25 yard targets, which feels like it could totally be in play.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot for Drake London against a Viking squad, who I guess have been a little bit better against receivers lately, but are still the worst defense against fantasy wide receivers this season. I guess for a good portion of this game, Stephon Gilmore is going to be guarding Drake London. He has had some pretty spotty results. Receivers like Puka Nakua, DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison have had huge games on him. Gilmore is going to be in the slot a lot of the time, so Drake doesn't really need to worry about him the entire time anyways. I think he's going to have a big game here.
I like it. All right. On to the next one, the tight ends. I believe one of these weekends, one of them, Trey McBride, will fall into the end zone. Perhaps it's this one. I'll take my chance. What should we be expecting from Brockington, Bowers, and Kate Alton?
Yeah, I mean, Brock at this point is just kind of inevitable. And the Buccaneers defense against tight ends is in the bottom 5 in the league as well. So it just feels like a situation where you have the number 1 tight end going up against a defense that's not really equipped to deal with tight ends. And this should be another positive game script for Brock, which has helped him all season being down in games. And this should be more the same against the Buccaneers, who've been playing some good ball as of late. And you should be throwing the ball a ton. And Bowers should absolutely capitalize on that.
Yeah, Grant knows exactly why Kate Otton's going to feast this week. The Raiders have allowed insane numbers to tight ends over the last 4 weeks, including 7 touchdown receptions to tight ends, allowing 27 fantasy points per game to tight ends, which is just absolutely insane. I think this is a great bounce back spot for Kate Otton.
Got hate coughing. All right. Where are we stand against this kind of medic? Ugh. All right. I'm taking a chance on Tony Pollard. Just decent bit of touches last week. Tyler Spears just can't seem to stay healthy here, albeit low scoring game. Not super ideal here. But the Jag sucks. Matt Jones isn't particularly great either. So in theory, we should get our strong run game. Tyrone Tracy, Garendo, what should we like about them?
Yeah, much like the reason of Alvin Kamara going up against a bad run defense, Tyrone Tracy is going up against New Orleans in that same game, who have really struggled against the run pretty much all season. And I mean, Tracy, there was kind of some questions last week. You saw Singletary get some carries on a drive, but I'm not particularly worried about it. And Drew Lock, I mean, super volatile, could throw picks and things. It feels like a spot where you lean on the run when the defense especially isn't equipped to deal with it. So it feels like a spot where it's run often and early for both teams in this game. It should be kind of low scoring, which will keep both running backs kind of in the game.
Yeah, I think Garenda is a solid play here. McCaffrey and Mason aren't going to be playing for the 49ers here in a pretty decisive spot for them. They're on a 3-game skid. They kind of have to make a stand here if they want a shot at the playoffs. The Bears' run defense is relatively weak. Garendo has looked good when he's taken the place of the other backs in San Francisco so far this season. 42 rushes for 246 yards on 5.9 yards per carry. So I think this is a great spot for him.
I like it. All right, on to the next tier here, receivers. I'm rocking with Jacoby Myers. This just is a very condensed receiving room. Willing to take my chance that if it's not Brock Bowers, it could be Jacoby Myers. Aiden O'Connell, Caesar. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison. What should we like about them here?
Yeah, Jason might just be the GOAT. He, in terms of targets, it's continually been rising the last few weeks. We obviously saw that huge one pop game when DK missed the game. But outside of that, I mean, he's just been involved early and often throughout games. The target share has been great. We saw against the Cardinals just a couple weeks ago, he had 6 catches for 77 and found his way into the end zone. A lot of that did kind of come in the later part of the game when they were trailing, and there was a drive at the end when he was kind of fed a lot, and it seems like they might have found a matchup they can exploit. And he's definitely the best route runner on this team. So in situations where they're running a lot of man, JSN is going to be the guy they target in a lot of those spots.
Yeah, picking another receiver from this Falcons Vikings matchup in Jordan Addison, who's been getting targeted at a higher clip in the last couple of games. Falcons have been looking really shoddy as far as slot coverage goes, just because of some injuries hurting their depth. So I think, Justin Jefferson getting the normal amount of attention he gets on the defensive side. I think Addison should be able to feast. High volume situation here against the Falcons with him and Sam Darnold.
I'll lock it. Willithan Disley for me. Jake Ferguson and Knox/Kincaid for Jackson. Yeah, I mean, I'm just taking a chance on a receiver here. Quentin Johnston is just fraud, to put it simply. None of the other receivers have kind of stepped up here. He's getting more design stuff. Willing to take a chance with the Chargers likely playing from behind and without essentially a running game right now. That Disley could get a bit more involved here. Jake Ferguson and Dawson Knox. What should we like about them?
Yeah, so Ferguson's had a relatively disappointing season this year. But it feels like Cooper Rush is kind of the guy that's been targeting these tight ends a lot more than Dak was early on in the season. And Jake Ferguson hasn't really had the benefit of being around for those games. He was out with a concussion for, I want to say, 2.5 games. He got taken out of 1 and then missed 2 with a short week on Thanksgiving. But it's looking like he's returning this week. And Luke Schoonmaker was having some pretty productive performances and obviously isn't as talented as Jake Ferguson. So feel like Jake Ferguson will be in a lot of those same spots and should be able to do a little more with the target share.
Yeah, I like the Buffalo Bills tight end position this week. I'm just going to go with the assumption that it's Knox because we still haven't gotten any real confirmation of Kincaid practicing yet since his knee injury. But yeah, they're going up against a Rams defense that gives up the 7th most points to tight ends this season. Knox, who went up against a Chiefs defense who is pretty shoddy against tight ends, saw 6 targets and 40 yards. I think obviously if Kincaid's in full capacity this week, he feasts even more than does Knox. I just think this is a great spot here. Josh Allen has been super hot, so look for him to keep that going. Oh, and Keon Coleman's out too, so maybe does something with the usage.
I like it. All right, where we differ from the crowd. He hasn't IPO'd yet.
I asked for that, by the way. Hopefully we get it before game time.
Perfect. But willing to take the chance with Sear McCormick potentially getting something done here. I'm sure Jackson or Grant realistically would have taken this one if he'd IPO'd. But yeah, that's my only logic. He did well last week, willing to take a chance, eat compounds. I like Jonathan Brooks taking, I like the Kenneth Gainwell takes a lot here. So explain what's going on there.
Yeah, I was going to pick Kenny Gainwell, but Jackson beat me to it. But Jonathan Brooks feels like he's in a spot in that same game where the Panthers might be down a lot and they're kind of just working in the new guy into their offense. He also caught 3 passes last week, I believe. And so in a game when they'll probably be trailing a lot, it feels like he could get a ton of dump off work and screen work that'll just kind of add up points. And his projection's low enough at this point where you're not risking a ton. So this feels like a good spot for Jonathan Brooks to have his first like real week of production.
Yeah, we got both the Eagles running backs on here this week. Obviously, the Panthers are league worst run defense, so that's a big part of the reasoning here. We saw Kenny get a touchdown last week against the Rams. I think they should, the Eagles that is, should develop a big lead here pretty early. They might be a little bit more frugal with Barkley's usage in the second half because of that. And Gainwell's not a bad running back. He could definitely clean up in the later part of the game.
I like it. On the next one, the receivers. Mike Evans continues to be an older receiver. I imagine he'll probably be fine, but if he's not, then I'm taking a chance on Sterling Shepard for the connection that Baker had with him at OU, and he's done all right this season. Parker Washington, Brandon Cooks. What should we be liking here?
Yeah, Parker Washington has done the vast majority of his damage in games that Mac Jones has started. We saw in the second half last week against Houston, he was involved a ton. He had 12 targets, 6 catches, over 100 yards, and did score. So he just feels like he might have some sort of connection with Mac, and they're comfortable throwing to each other probably because they've run a lot of second-team reps together throughout training camp and things of that sort. So I would expect him to continue to get targeted, probably not to the extent he was last week, but he'll find himself open and at least running routes more than he was in the past.
I like it.
I like that too. Brandon Cooks he's going up against the Bengals. In his return from his injury, he had 7 targets from QB Cooper Rush. I believe that was team leading 7 targets. But it was quiet. He only had 16 receiving yards. I think he's going to continue to see those targets here against the Bengals. They allow the 11th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers this season. I just like this spot as a sleeper day for Brandon Cooks, who Cooper Rush seems to like.
Nice. Sorry. All right. This is where we all punted into confusion mainly. It's just a very weird week for if you want actual smart tight ends, I think Jackson and Grant have the correct ones to be hunting here. There's just no receivers in New Orleans, and those guys are involved. Greg Dulcich, I don't know, maybe he gets on the field. Isn't Theo Johnson gone now essentially?
Yeah. The Mac Hollins, James Franco child.
Yeah, it could be Daniel Bellinger realistically there, but I'm just taking a chance that maybe this receiver type tight end maybe gets used there. That's all I got. Boston Moreau, Juwan Johnson, excite us with these bangers.
It is actually ridiculous that Greg Dulcich literally has James Franco's exact face and he has Mac Hollins' exact hair. But Foster Moreau, he scored a touchdown in a game without Taysom earlier on in the season. And while Juwan will probably get a lot of the intermediate routes and kind of working them up the field, it feels like Foster Moreau is a red zone target that the Saints are comfortable with and Derek Carr is comfortable with. He obviously played with him in Oakland, and it feels like a spot where Moreau has a level of comfortability where they're able to kind of loft balls up to him in the end zone. He gets a lot of fade routes and things of that sort. So I would not be surprised if he finds his way into the end zone this week.
Yeah. I like Juwan for similar reasons. The Giants D aren't the worst ever against tight ends, but they're just like easy to bully in general, I'd say. And like Wells said, the Saints are really without any playmakers. And Juwan, once Taysom left the game early, had 6 targets, 77% route participation rate. So I think this is a good spot for him.
I am as well. But yeah, that's kind of it for this one. Interesting week for the NFL. More and more injuries every single day. I love checking Twitter and seeing Joel Embiid has just since been out essentially since the Maxi confrontation. Classic. But
The
yes,
elephant in the room.
the elephant in the room. But stay safe. Yeah, invest accordingly. Hopefully, you guys are doing well with these Spark contests. We're slowly but surely figuring them out ourselves and trying to see what's the best ways. But yeah, subscribe. Talk to y'all later. Yeah, peace now.
Peace.